Going to, the introduction tonight will be given by Adra Rain, the UNC delegate from the Hambone Poetics Institute, a kind of rogue, surreptitious organization that pops up in various campuses. I'm not going to say it's at Bothell or at NYU or somewhere in Cincinnati, but it's possible, or Chicago, but it's possible. Adra is a poet, filmmaker, scholar, critic. She's completing her dissertation at UNC on Nate, Mackey, and Ed Roberson's work, along with Susan Howe. Her dissertation is called Resonance Over Resolution, Resisting Definition in Nathaniel Mackey, Ed Roberson, and Susan Howe's post-1968 Poetics. Her collection of poems, Want Catcher, has just been published by the operating system. So could you please welcome Adra Rain, who will introduce us.
I wasn't expecting an introduction. Thank you. How's everyone doing? That might have sounded rhetorical. I'll rephrase. How's everyone feeling tonight? I was given the instruction tonight to to stir up the crowd. But how do you stir up the crowd at a poetry reading? Someone else has supplied the liquor. That wasn't me. So my answer is close reading and wordplay. So here we go. An introduction is an initiatory step, a beginning movement, a preparing of the way, a leading or bringing in, a welcoming. But a welcoming is always more than it purports to be. A form of introduction that doesn't always disclose what exactly one is being invited into. And the spaces where we gather are a gathering of forces in conflict. One of the many things Fred Moten's poetry shows us is how language participates in that conflict, how it initiates us to encounter the institutions that make our introductions to one another possible and impossible. He alerts us that the commons of this space where we meet tonight is a troubled one, even though there's love here, lots of love. Love and critique always arrive entwined in Moten's work. You don't lay down one to pick up the other. They are necessarily locked together in a common struggle towards something, in motion, going someplace. At the same time, in Field Trio, Moten writes, I ran from it and was still in it. Still, as in continuing, the impossibility of escape from these structures of enclosure. Still, as in motionless, finding stillness in the infinite sprint away from them. I ran from it and was still in it. Both senses of still may amount to the same thing, fugitivity's imminence. Imminence is an introduction to what is already here, what is already operating within. And Ed Roberson's poetry brings us into the here and now of history's imminence, preparing the way for a revision of the daily landscape we walk through without always seeing. Because, as he puts it in Atmosphere Conditions, you don't want to see it at all when it comes down to it. Roberson shows us that the simplest perceptions of daily life discloses the history of forces in conflict. Driving on a New Jersey highway, the silhouette of a heron passing overhead makes a visual rhyme with a series of other shapes. A dragonfly, a commuter helicopter transporting the wealthy, a military helicopter distributing crack cocaine, the spoon-like body of the heron transmuting into a heroin spoon, the deafening sound of helicopter blades mixing the screaming guitar of Jimi Hendrix and the sound of bombs going off in churches. The landscape is fuller than we may have imagined it to be. And as if answering a complaint that these networks of meaning and association are merely flights of poetic fancy, Roberson writes in the same poem, "You only pretend it was imagination easier than to say your eyes were open. So as we meet here, under common aim, drawing on the resources of the institution without necessarily serving the institution, wanting to serve something else that we make together by bringing one another in, facing the trouble together, being still in it. Let's open our eyes, and let's open our ears. Listen to what Moten and Roberson do with words, how they make them bend this way and that, toward history, toward social criticism, toward visionary readings of word and world, toward the pleasure of sound, toward love. Listen to what they help us hear in the language we know and the language we don't know, what they help us see, what they help us feel, what they help us taste and touch. And let's open our hearts to welcome our dear guests, Fred Moten and Ed Roberson.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with so many old friends and on such a great occasion. And I've been nervously thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to read? I should try to make something new. It would be a proper tribute to Nate. And by the time I started working up enough energy to be properly nervous for that, I found out I would be opening for so I'm between a rock and a hard place. I remember one time when I was a grad student at Berkeley, at Zellerbach Hall, where students at Berkeley could go for free. They had a Sonny Rollins concert. So the only price I had to pay to hear Sonny Rollins was that I had to go sit through Branford Marcellus first. He opened for Sonny. But luckily, Sonny came out and blew like 3 notes of St. Thomas, and the memory of Branford had disappeared. And I always was like feeling I always thought it was funny. And now I realize this is the same thing's about to happen to me. But soon there will be no evidence that I was ever here. Anyway, no point in me trying to write a proper tribute to Nate. I realized because I started thinking about the Eddie Murphy definition of tribute, where he used to, as he began his comedic career, a lot of his shows were what he called tributes to Richard Pryor, in which he would do Richard Pryor's routine. And I've been doing Nate's routine for like 30 years, so it's all a tribute. So this is, and this is just some more. This is a kind of a continuation of a poem, Come On Get It, that's in the field trio that I kept working on because Joe told me I should try to do something serial. So I'm trying. So the field trio ends with 12, and this starts with 13. I'm not going to read the numbers. Actually, I probably should. 13. This is the world, and here I am, and as I am, but not at all. The work is all, and not at all, and all in all, and all in nothing. And Prince says, please come from nothing. From all of Zora and all of Dara, the world is dry land, earth is water. Our regular shit is muddy and irregular. Our shit is the shit in this regard. Regardless, we started walking the floor of the sea to turn it over, plowing the muck, low country, just like mules of the leafy green, sempiternal and sodden underground, thinking the sudden thickness of our steps, infused with periodic swimming to get the air we can't breathe, saving breath in the muddle of our passage, as Mullen says, or been fixing to say. Fixing, we say like fitting. Imagine a little swelling of the space after the consonant, just a little bit broader time before the X turns to a T, which is implied, then silenced, then acts that same little hollow before the end, because the end won't come. Then one last breath and keep writing that shit underneath the floor is our commune. The heavy step of getting down taps lightly in makeshift repetition. This constantly coming back down beat, emboomed in unslit density, recessive unrest in black bottom, the silky lyric viscosity of how we move held down, so that all we can do is take the leg, fling limb in contact, play moss or ball just like the common amputee, as cool as the other side of the silty pillow. Our shit is irregardless in this regard. That anti-citational burst is the book of life, and all we got to do is come out to show them we ain't got to show you shit. We're posthumous and prenatal. The shit is posthumous and preternatural. In the muck, the deep on shore, waiting, wade, bathing, we laugh to keep from laughing like a tremendous submachine. The earthiness of life is irreducibly moist. Digging is a kind of diving. Having turned to the turn, we see that shit. We see the shit. We see our shit and keep our head above water so we can dive. Dig. An amphibian, unarmored, adrift, underderived from a prehistory of fallenness, black life is wet. Like when Nate tends to certain fluidities of gait, but gracefully mud stuck in the brutal clearing of land, unforgetting the river's memory, like Morrison says in Mississippi, like Sine says when the escapist sings Rose at summer while singing I never learned to swim, while swimming down the broken street. We're whales, and he don't know how we embrace, submerged as Mary Lou and whirled as Darwish. What's it feel like to see through blackness, mixing singing and drowning, sounding and dancing, but hesitating forever to be a signal or a judge? This they asked on holiday, in protest of themselves, surrounded by themselves in bolts of blue, though that honorable fabric don't feel so good. Whiteness is the set of interpersonal relations. The interpersonal is an intrapersonal fantasy. The intrapersonal is an impersonal fantasy. The impersonal fantasy of the intrapersonal is your picture, imagination and the law of solitude. On the other hand, in which this same hand is held off blue in extrapersonal folding, the image of hands held in folding, sociality, blackness, is unavailable, but the tangle, sociality, blackness, infuses every image. My Black Death is my debut, my stole, done up in blueprint blue. It sure looks good on you. It just don't feel so good to disappear in a loose arrangement of flowers. Slave narrative ain't the genre in which one gives an account of slavery in oneself. Slave narrative is the disappearance of oneself and the diffusion of slavery in the giving, which can't be accounted for of the account, sounding drowning's loose arrangement. Just be making something all the time so you can use it to be making something with somebody all the time. Maybe the distinction is between empathy and empathy, one emerging from a point of view, the other occurring in shatter and entwine, Tyrian, but which knows which is which? Maybe it all goes back to that same black Athenic vehemence and passion, an infeeling of outness sung for the caravan. She from around the way of ain't no way, and ain't no nonviolent way to look at it. The camera pans down, moves down, spiraling into the wine and urine-stained hallway. And what the camera moves toward as I, a hand that somehow was and is the camera, the hand's gesture at and with in all this beauty is the camera's motion, is having fallen, in fallenness is all that beauty. Lorenzo Moten, Humanities C, 3rd and 8th, Tuesday, Thursday, April 18th, 2017, 14. The smile of life is a blackbird. The blackbird is the creator of a happy living. You see the sun, a garden, a river. A blackbird shall be seen. A blackbird brings joy to the world. Black is the base of a drawing and an art piece. Black is the color of the sky when stars shine. Black is my culture and my color. White is the set of interpersonal relations. A tractor beam for the placement of earth. Miscreants trying to put where they live in their pockets. As we have not and we are not, but we share space-time sheer and shards through noir of the lived experience to mess up the genuine article. Resistance is an atmospheric condition whose relation to power, which is derivative of resistance, is derivation itself. Derivation turns relation inside out. Preservative, explosive, unrestricted endogamy, like a ship upon the sea. We tend to think of anti-blackness as the denial of personhood to black persons. It's also the imposition of personhood on blackness. It's raining men, and I wish it would rain. But looking back on when I was a little nappy-headed boy, back when we entered black study, my feelings begin to get their exercise elsewhere along the road to my disappearance. Is there an etymological and then perhaps conceptual connection between a parent and a parent? Zoe, chill, so beautiful you let me disappear. Rhythmic placelessness is our garden, enfolding, bending, and crumpling. Back to living again, with its inborn recursion, is prolegominant to any future metaphysics, or a metaphysics for a preface that can't stop coming. We share the preservation of placelessness under the duress of placement, to be put in place and kept in place, to be conferred a place and to have it, to own it, to try to keep it, to have a body imposed upon one as one's place, one's simultaneous foundation and incarceration in denial of the N plus one, is monocultural sugar for your golden bowl. Our milpa, all out from and all up under and all over all and all of anyone's ownership of solid subdivided ground, turns transubstantiation co-substantial. Comida, conmovida, that's not your body, that's my body. And she almost says, almost says. As they go all falling out together, the dislocation and differentiation of the mass, the celebration of the mess and mass displacement, the unruly animonastic dispersion and cenobitic diffusion, and as such, in all its deformative force, the preservative placeless place, the gateless blood-stained gate. Who says black women say they hear their babies they can't have, you trying to say. The view they walk, vestibular blur, vestimulant mule, the vestibler, the mule bone blue, deacon blue, which the soloist, who is not one, impersonates as a circular thrill of floating recircular field. Let our flesh be shared, shard, sheer, she. It's hard. Damn, this quick incarnate incompleteness. The thing Ra calls the event of the Negro is the sign of reviled, refused, recombinant generality. The sheer Ellingtonia wrapped around the wooing presence of the absence in the instrument, which is there in the presence of the instrument, which is there in the elegant recess of the arc surrounding deep in the edge of sounding, some of them asking in a migrant chord's embrace about release, some possible 1-2 that won't take anybody's fixed position. It's some degenerate satin generativity. Ra says individuation and the individual is not just not one, they are more generally split in supernumerary, some kind of paired para-individuality, an impaired individuation whose design is pointed toward a self whose business is in the street, open, processual, but dignified at the gig. with that fly-ass gig bag. Raw side signs intellect in action, sign a favorite phrase of Du Bois playing, impersonating, in an open set of open sets of unsettled, unsettling breathing, handed chiefs, as something other than himself, which is as it should be, which is how he is, this continual calling us out our name, in love with how we open up somehow sometimes, rubbing something in and out of the way of things, copula all out of place, portable as the sound we see in the surround, Ross says, as he always be saying, displacing, celebrating that we a mess. What if we mess it all up? Then you can't tell us how to use it. What if the umbrella underneath which individual and individual, singular and multiple, severable and asunder don't quite live is the merely conceptual condition of separation, which feels so good when you rub up on it, the pulse comes to an end in sheets of rain and killing moon and thin derivative. Then you can't tell us how we're wrong. What if the relation between, which is the place between placelessness, timelessness, and inseparability, is no count after all, like BB's unbearable phrasing on How Blue. Can you get to that, sister? Can time travel on this train? Then maybe vision is the hidden scandal, Proto-Indo-European root, wade, to separate, Proto-Indo-European root, bathe, to see, as if to separate is to see, as if separation is at first an ordering of the scene that is, more fundamentally, an ordering and seeing. What if to think in disorder like Ra, like Denise's song flute, is to think outside ordered seeing, the sound of that dropped H resplendent in Hester, re-given by brother? What if this interplay of ordering and seeing is solitary confinement? What if disorder is having a party in the givenness of the party? Ra plays the companionship of sentient flesh, thinking in disorder, and experience in sunlit placelessness, till we're all the way out our damn minds in another storybook. If the problem is the maintenance of separation, where you are seen, I see you, happy now, motherfucker, then saving is the blur that movement makes in not arriving. Ra thinks the eventual thing as irrevocable passage through embodiment, as imposition and theft, the trace of the thing in nothingness, the nothingness given in withdrawal from thingliness, where grace is constant, radically anarchic groove and furrow. Perhaps in this regard, bodies are just remnants of calculation left to the wind of their own captured fading. It's like a dam, or a diked up dictic rabbit in Beverly Farms, hoping to be cooked by Beverly Corbett, but subject to the subject's description of subjective experience, which is lonely at the base of a tree it never noticed, being a bee rabbit, and silent at the next cipher, thereby constraining us to picture and enumerate the subject of experience at the intersection of the individual and the indivisible. Is it a rabbit or a duck? Though open or closed, fast or thin? Nah, just this and that cloud, not in between us. Us, motherfucker. All inauthentically what? This, that beauty. Do you think that all you can say of cinema's extravagance of the image is somehow compatible with some fullness of the black subject? What if your movement through the image cuts the very idea of the individual as well? Your genius shows the tangle, the common roots of the visual and the visual, but that's what they refuse in Gila Tao. They have cine too, but they keep giving it away. They're like a burning shepherd when their children hold the boom. When will our children hold the boom again? What is the visual? An anti-sensual seeing and separation and of it. Then the visual regulates the senses so that the false assumption is confirmed. An intoned, haptic looking back in black on black enfolding, refusing the visual and the visual in goodbye. Seeing's blind if you can't hear. Blur and blue and of it, shattering spin inside, a curse or curve, cuvee that animates before the beginning and after hours, eradicating the taint of purity from would have been outside. Feel that? Funk not only moves, it can be moved, dig, die. Maybe that's all life is anyway, that dance, that open need of chance. I mean, Chile says there is no time travel because he's been there. Mom and them wasn't there no more, he says. He says they left an open door and then it's down to the direction. A fit between come for me, please come, he says. Who dead? Well, look how the dead get down. Come on down, we say, as Rankin says we say, so every shade can underhear what Hayden says. The austere, unlonely office of the homeless is hospitality. Sunday morning early, coffeeless, orangeless, winter lit up like Ra's late peignoir wore until sundown. Gotta learn to see through things. Gotta learn to love being seen through. There are appearances, lenses, not like open caskets through American pictures, but what, in turning from the elusive, delusional density of that thing, let lovers get down in the environment. The work is vestibular in its disappearance. But disappearance ain't just vanishing, but radical indivisibility that opposes, in radical presence, the merely apparent. Disapparent, radical presence is disappearance. It's like some lotion made of lyrical steel or Valyrian olive. But if the art world is just a formal conspiracy to make sure that the nothing that is seen through is displaced by things that can only be seen when they're the only things to see, then what is it to see through a radical presence is obscured by desire for the monument, the mirror of the dead, which, with sound logic and absent morals, identifies inapparent instrumentality as a degraded antagonist. No, man, the work is a disappearing passage to the socio-archaeological plane through white, vampiric omnicide, one by one. So imagine an echo-musicological museology to anarrange the scene you set in R and C. Feld's field, Baldwin's scene, individual, undervisual, felt. Why destroy a Schutz when you can destroy a Rembrandt? I used to know all these people who know how to see through shit. Then I found myself here. Man is a singularity one all but can't help but believe in. But all can do it easy. Our shit is stoically sub-historical. On the other motherfucking hand, neoliberalism is a concerted attempt to obscure the essentially exclusionary relation of identity and politics, which is better known as liberalism. It's ashamed of where it comes from, a cold city on a dry marsh. Lots of loose talk about hills and light, but here we come, the wet recrudescence of the marsh, the much more plus less than malarial denizens of Le Marais, an anti-aristocratic swarm, unenlightened, carcerally unfree to use politics as a weapon against murderers and their intentions. Our primary target is politics. This straight ahead straight obscures us till disaggregate and sneaky clear, freely constrained to use identity against the zombies who invented it. Identity is our end. This paradox lets us find ourselves. I'm so-and-so, I'm this, I'm that, but we all just whack. We act like little pullets, lost in the pitter-patter of our little old blank-ass bullets, meddling middle-brow bullshitters with our trifling tweedledum shit Twitter bitterness, our semi-professional nastiness, our raggedy-ass new spastic liberality. We try to protect ourselves from them and forget to protect us from ourselves. Why is there something rather than nothing? So devils can steal it. Does art move against our terrible capacity to settle? Or does it settle where we move? Violence is all it should be, nothing but beauty. And we say that softly in the violent air. The hole in what we see through can't be stolen. Ain't my stole, but what we share. World is a picture. A point of view is picture's possibility. If one can occupy that point of view and take that picture, then one can be pictured too. This reflective picturing of space-time It's Newton's physics and Kant's metaphysics doing the nasty. Unmoved without moving, or just not moving all that good. Meanwhile, here's Corrigan for Gail Jones. For Gail Jones. Does Corregidora come correct, or is she a thing to be corrected? Can she bear correction? Must she bear correction? Is her bearing alive? Can she bear, as Alex might say, that arsenic inability to bear the music we bear? We got an ear for unbearable detail, as Alex might say. Can't stop, won't stop when we get enough. Can't call it, can't claim it, ain't mine. Sing it, can't say it. Run tell that degenerate sound. Defective gore and cold flow barren, unborn, baby, mama. Come on. Can't come, son. Won't come. It's a cold, cold coming. It's like ice around my heart. I know I'm gonna quit somebody. Every time this feeling starts, we done made us some connections. They made us some corrections. We cut your heart and lonely will off. We wound your death and play that back as more than just not you. This you? Nah, it's not just you, my beautiful sister. Black is so much more than just not you, it hurts. Give me more, I want it, I like it. Party on fire, then I'm gone. Nothing to correct, because it's all connected. Slave song ain't properly oppositional because it ain't properly autobiographical. All it tells is nobody's story, assuming the opposition, generation after impossible generation. As disguise coolly reveals itself, the concealment of identity misunderstood in the disavowal and placement of appearance, covered in a kind of uncovering, the mutual orbit of concealment and unconcealment, confinement and revelation, hiding and showing, uniform and monstrosity, bad habit, strange habit, often habitation. Non-recognition was the world burning. The ice cap started melting in the hole. Anti-blackness ain't personal, but is it experienced personally? Is such experience real or true? Nah, it's way more fucked up than the real thing. Ain't nothing like that, as Aretha say they say. Beautifully nothing like Marvin and Tammy say they say. Works of art are to be seen, but art only works if it's seen through till it's gone. Hey, 19.5, North, we ain't got nothing in common. No, we can't talk at all. But when we slide on down, our queerness, our hard gym-like quadraphenic black bitchiness, our nothingness is our opacity, our opulent transience, our opalescent training. To be seen through can't help but loom. We can't help it. That's all we do. Fix broken hearts by quilting flesh and earth, handy, unmanned, whispering, bending study, rocking steady, everybody steady rocking till everybody gone. It's like a book of gauze for which cinema prepares us. But we don't return to the book. We turn through the book's disappearance. The dance of the turn and fold bears cut and tear, which ain't about rendering things transparent, but enacting the lucence through which we see no things. We see through things. A book of glass, a black stained color wheel, and violet sash, an abreactive brush, and broken, turning, anaredacted loosening of leaves. They gone. That's what it feels like. That's what we feel now. Let's call this song exactly what it is. A Rana, Aretha to Ray, and looked off shutter, view off point, and vibe with shook, wandering, and determinate treme delirium, studious and ain't studying you nonchalantly, breathing a little subtle ass, unsettling distance, and then some, an inseparable beauty even art can't take. All that. Regarding this disregard, black art is criticism in the afternoon. So, one more. It's short. This is called Nathaniel Mackey. Nathaniel Mackey come from some of everywhere. Somewhere so deep that some of everywhere come with you. To become for our occult beginnings worldly in that other way. Garnet burned in sand and long green shade belonging in our garden. Our feeling for the game is secret. Harriet is our conductor and our unfinished readiness for the world. Occult and separate mixture. That long revealed weave is come undone as our unfinished readiness. The messed up plan of someone else's dance. The celibate screen, then an open window. You move the whole question from room to room, echo chamber. Our always ready, unofficial word. The great Ed Roberson.
I got so busy listening to Fred, I forgot to pull out my own shit. I'll find it, wait. Fred is always clears out a huge space for folks. I don't know how I'm gonna get it. Thanks, Fred. Thank you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a tribute. I want to read Song of Young Number 6 and Song of Young Number 7. Dear Angel of Dust, in one of your earlier letters, the one you wrote in response to Song of Number 3, you spoke of sorting out what speaks of speaking of something and what more valuably speaks from something, i.e., where the source is available, becomes a resource rather than something evasive, elusive, sought after. Well, what I wanted to say then was this. We not only can, but we should speak of loss, or to avoid, quotation marks notwithstanding, any such inkling of self-pity, is to speak of absence as unavoidably inherent in the texture of things threatened. Dream seed, habitual claw. You really do seem to believe in, to hold out for some first or final gist underlying it all. But my preoccupation with origins and ends is exactly that, a occupation. Tonight my mind struggles, for example, to reject all reminder of thought. It doubles up in some extravagant way as if to ask you back the question, always implied in that scowl of yours. But the truth is that I don't even believe any such question exists. I see the things of your world as solid in a way the world in my myriad words uncoil can't even hope to be. Not ethereal, mind you, not insubstantial, unreal, or whatever else. Only an other, possibly other, sort of solidarity, as if its very underseams, or to be more exact, those as of its advent, they sprouted hooves, or as if the sun, which had come to vote us both away, might have extended horns. What was wanted least, but now comes to be missed, is that very absence, an unlikely other whose inconceivable occupancy glimpses of ocean beg access to, not resource so much as source, yours in. The metaphor of the potter is commonly used to describe God's creative activity. Believing that God shapes children in the mother's womb, Rwanda women of a childbearing age are careful to leave water ready before they go to bed, so that God may use it to create children for them, is known as God's water. Song number 7. A dark head sits brooding its image where the light breaks our need evolves. All those other earlier entrances of light, it now wants to recollect, come crashing to the floor. So many repeats of an incumbent loss. And where the space lights up, an old affliction rears its head. The tide pulls in again at once through the swell of some lust, some exploded sun. This I heard my own self say, the new day begins. Beside our bed, a bowl of ready water, though we dance upon the graves of the yet to be born, awaiting birth, by which or in which a potter god could wet what clay would catch the flow of our endangered blood. Here, where the few root some unsunned angel of loss ekes out its plunder, possessed. We lick the salt of each infected wound's unyielding rhythms, wordings. With dawn, preach that. Kicked, made a Christ of. With dawn, preached at, kicked, made a Christ of. With dawn, preached at, kicked, made a Christ of. By now the angels awaited entrance, averts all remorse, resurrects old wants. West of us and eastward reeks of storms lit up in the patches possessed. I stroke the baobab's gritty wood, whose various branchings echo this our remembered song. So, let the ladders pierce our hearts. Punjabi's wrath renews the earth. A wet sun swirl its milk in our throats. This body of waters dark flesh, red floods so new, light. loose clouds, rub each other like thighs. That's me. Dear angel dust. In last night's poem, which I've yet to write, the two of us were singing some distant church, a combination acoustic electric church in which the floorboards splintered, with something like religious, something like leg irons, gave our voices weight. I call it the Heartbreak Church. It sits on an island known as Wet Sun, which itself sits only a mile or so southwest of Heartbreak Strait. But what to say about birds? I say the fact of it is so basic and at the same time baseless as to always float free of any such sense of and about. We've had this pearl before, of course, a supreme fiction. I decided to call it, even though I've been accused of apparently of upwardly displacing sex, of being merely obsessed with fucking. Well, fuck that. I'm just going to get it into both our heads that to unbend, I often envision you as Moten. That is, to unbend is to misconceive or miscarry. To want to be done with any relational coherence. To want to abort. You can't continue to want this whole bleeding, flooding fact. Find it intact without a cord, somehow God's water by itself won't do. I remember him working on that. Well, like I said, we thank you, sir. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is try to, God's water won't do. I didn't think I'd get to that line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to read the new work. This is all new work that I've been working on. The new book is in 3 parts, and the first part is a good bit about nature poems, about our loss and our foolishness, our inability to see. And the second part is really about seeing, really, about our failures to see ourselves. And so I'm just going to read them, and again, they're short. The first one is called The Medallion. My brother came back from Vietnam with a Bronze Star, but he kind of refused to talk to anybody about what he had seen. And years later, I respected that. And years later, we were sitting in the living room once, and he started to tell me. So we spent that evening, and he never said another word again for about 10 years. And I was home a couple of weeks ago, and he's not well. And it's frightened everybody that he's not put up a fight. Or rather, he is fighting, but it's kind of crazy. And what the doctor said is that it's belated post-traumatic stress. And we can't figure out whether he wants to die or what. So I have a friend who, like my brother, but Brock has acne. So one day it dawned on me it wasn't acne, it was shrapnel. Acne doesn't pop upside your head, I don't think. He never said. He kept whatever you thought adolescent scraggly. So blending with the cuts, it looked uncut. All his buddies are dead except one, who's cutting it close on the bottle. A grade school teacher used to thump our skulls with her finger. Look sharp, she'd stab through our lulls. Well, we do. We jump at the slightest attention. Having to face shrapnel, gouged up paint, as contemporary an expression as any hung on the wall, articulating neck or face, gallery or seat. Next to him, on you see the culture of cuts and feathers, colored clays and piercings, differently brought home. Ancients knew the feathers and colored clays disguised or displayed, the beloved fruits lit, sweet taste won, knew the sharp teeth to stay and both hold and stay, thread, body adornment. The reminiscence of her bloody kiss, the medallion, more meat than laurel. What we face leaves its face in our paint. The natural of it brushing in or something away by what we're up against. What weird we have to meet. We, on return, half warrior, half what is fought. And how weird to us, weird once meant we were, which meant we are fate's partner. Beloved, we can't wash the origin off the skin. That first kiss, your country, that blood kiss, the thickness of skin averages, enough to keep the hedges between neighboring lots, your brush up, riotous growths, us, the world around us, outside, up against, even ourselves against. Exclusivities, cultivated thorn, gates arose. The broken glass of the empty, red-lined lot keeps out up to a point, and then it's exactly as my friends later said, not the scales, but the method of nature. The laws always leave something out. The life weighed against the feather in the scales. The canopic jars forgot in a dusty corner of the tomb. The useless judgment incorrect. He was correct. The skin as the wall can't hold it all, out or in. The collar pinches the clay of the next skin up into tags as we age. They ball up and fall off sometimes the way we wish trouble wore off, or hate, or hurt, just wore away, or the noose around our necks left off, and we're free with a shower, released, unimprisoned, easily as taking off, a tie for washing and walking away naked, undecorated. Now, even as then, the legendary warriors would have preferred none of it ever happened. But they knew the gods never take anything back. They continue to create people in the trees, chimera, dissociated burning stars. This next answer to that is a few years ago, Juan Jose Padilla, who was a bullfighter in Spain, was gored by a bull that caught him right under his, right in the neck. The horn went in right underneath the jawbone and came out his mouth. So the photograph that was taken of the goring has Padilla being stretched out almost like a cake himself, being dragged by the bull with the horn hooked under his up through his throat and the horn sticking out his mouth. And I thought of all of the arrangements people make with trying to make peace with violence and chaos. Bullfighting is one of the crazier ones. Yeah. Padilla has since been gored twice in his succeeding years. He's lost an eye. He's made a new career of himself under the title of the pirate because he's lost his eye. And the last time he was gored, the newspapers made a big deal out of the fact that his eye popped out, the glass eye popped out, and they were looking for the glass eye. He came back. He's still fighting. That's humans. It's amazing, brings you to tears. It's crazy. The sculptor I talk about here is Michelangelo. Michelangelo is a sculptor of Moses, has a horn that comes out of the center of the head. So the poem begins, this is the light. Juan Jose Padilla's homage to America. The sculptor thrust a horn through the center of the forehead of Moses. The camera caught the shot of the bull's horn, screaming through the mouth of the matador, entering below the jawbone up the throat, the path of statement from somewhere near the heart of. With that, there might be no more reason to see. It's older pageantry, it's light. The dark horn affixed in the key of what it was or what it has to say, death still mocks us. As a man this time lived through a dance of scalpel, sutures, and dangerous knowledge beneath the operating room's light. Chosen to have a tongue of bull's horn in his mouth, his words waited to see if they are his or the bull's. It isn't a matter of last word, not word at all, but do the myths still send their herald? Are we of interest at all beyond the catabolic timing of photograph to prove what cannot be iterated. What teachings live between a kind and not of a kind we all know now as horns. Language transmits from mouth to ear. The photographer chooses his eyes for his mouth, chooses your eyes for your ears, to say he sees this word of moment. The matador uses his body for his mouth, chooses your sight on his body for your ears, to say this is how close we are also to what is happening at the moment. Happening, as we know of, has no possession of choice. Has its own element. Happening has nothing to say. No mouth, no ear. Yet here, choice has a tongue of black horn. Its mouth, the throat's epiphanous blood screaming. Its choice's ear. The immaterial moves into measure, a human understanding of where things stand in relation to the animal. Life is put into a position in advance. To agree is to buy a ticket. To be there is the people's tradition. Stadiums stand monument. Haciendas are afforded. Institution to drape capes of law around our momentary circle of steps. In the U.S., we do this move from immaterial belief into measure, where the black in our country stands in relation to life. The tip of the horn is coming through our mouth. The word carries our blood arrangement with ourselves of the light we see, ourselves in, screaming. I want to continue this idea of trying to see things, and I have this one memory of my grandfather, my dad's father. My grandfather in the long light of a bay window seat, asking me to give him the numbers to play. The grown-ups admonishing him for implicating me in his gambling. I remember his face looking at me, good, confident I knew something. This boy, he's too smart, I'm told they'd said. I had to live up. I think somewhere I said. I was not afraid to go see. Whether I was supposed to see or not, I looked at what I got slapped for. As hard as looking was meant something for in the first place, anyway. Not afraid I had something to go on for my asking. But what I saw was their fear for me, seeing but not in time to live, for what they knew the ropes come after me for, and I wasn't afraid enough to not be there. Not afraid was not what the ropes had not been able to do to me, but what I had done to make myself think I could do better than they thought I was. I was not supposed to be seeing clear of what was there in front of me when there wasn't anywhere I could go, unless I could see one way, some way, on my own. But the ropes see that not as a man's truest unraveling, but they see that for a lynching. We see that when we see any jubilee possible. We see the country that has to be crossed outside, recognized as the one freed from. We see the gambled legacy of the hit. They cashed in daily and fed us. We see the coin of it, the ownership, work through the neighborhood to live up to. Look at that ancient's child face gone softer. Look at the number, confident it knows something. In an idiom, the meaning of the expression is not predictable. The meaning of the expression is not predictable from the constituent elements from the words. Idiom actually directs meaning only to exclusive listeners of a language. It would seem to include only certain parts of the language, certain speakers of that language. So idiom is part of the language, but it's the language outside itself. And this poem begins a series of things. The title of this poem is What Really Is There. It's one thing to see the tree in your yard, moving from side to side, and quite another to watch that wave moving up the block, the whole street bent, then recoil, rolling forward. And once you learn to see that, the rain flying sheets, the fog lava extruding out of the air, a deer leaping blur wings behind it, the after image of shadows, the staggered resolution into color that is the crow's shifting blues, its auras below aura, the shifting into other forms altogether may follow, of course. The only thing it can't camouflage is its eyes. Look through the camouflage into its unchanging eyes. It's not true you can't see the wind, or exact from thin its measure who can walk between the raindrops. There is an idiom of basis. The researchers knew the jaguar was there. One native guide said he could smell her. Then another explained how not to be fooled into looking for her, but to recognize her eyes, which are not camouflage. And there she is. The wind isn't hiding either. It's just what it is, looks like. What's missing is our way to see a static face on a process, like we see lightning to mean electricity on a sign. It's not true you won't see racism if you don't look for it. The black magnolias are white. The lynching tree did not stop growing because that's not what you called it. Not what you call it. Something idiomatic in everything American you say. Those who toast dry butter to dear and no putting up some years. How long, long gone. But those come through, so dry long soda he calls them. Ordinary people, what the Midwest calls its own just folk. Where in the coal hills where I'm from, just fine, thank you, and better you just out of my way. That's a basic American value. That would win, but not right, civil law, in the face of those who did right, but not hold up emancipation. Using their own idiom, separate but equal, disguising a niggardly distribution, and the corrections of separation eventually fork tongue. altogether undone. We call it, but not call it, so deeply in our way that the conscious split legislates an untranslatable society upon us. Come to this, we are in judgment as we speak. The meaning of our expression is not predictable from its constituent element, as when one steals away another's property, which is in fact oneself, is taken as killing the owner's self-determination, loses the connect to either and anything, and everything doesn't make sense. Lost in the idiom, we don't know who to tell to put the gun down. We don't know who words are directed to, and deeper who, first rule of language, who they are, if we are speaking and from, what is beneath our feet, what really is there. What did I just see? Fog, its grains of water, water sand form, grinds out the skyline and the streets, the little park, stubborn, green, the last to wear down, until the white gull's jots on the grass disappear, and the disappearance joins, turns tail into water. Now a cloud leans against the window, blocking the view, gone blank, or stopped to rest from its own grown gray. The blank stare of a fog against the window, as if waiting to be let in, forced the room deeply and oddly more brightly into the building, or bid it as a spirit of light pass through the glass and let in itself. The sun can make the right density of fog emanate its own light. This glow in a day all wrong hanging in the air infuses the room with a luminous seeing nothing, nothing changed, nothing un or done, admissible in evidence in the light of day. In reality, it brings this absence, which surrounds each object present, clears the matter and the packing it came in away, and leaves the room unmoved in, shimmering and still, empty light. Okay, what did I just see? A plasma electrostatic discharge, the blank stare of a fog against the window as if waiting to be let in, a force, the whiteness of the whale. Our most governing laws since the Civil War have been framed by the resistance to emancipation, forces for occupation of the freed, laws framed to satisfy their individual vengeance to sabotage that national referendum of 750,000 lives at the spot, not photoshopped, not Twittered, but died at the line. That line created equal, opened to the Negroes among them our laws, framed by the infiltration of the losers of this referendum back into our government, construct Jim Crow, our winning hand into a trump of what they died for, of our national achievement. The over a distance sounds some monuments, some moments take to happen, as if caravan histories of music taken in what they happen, to sound like out of the mouths of standing beside a river, rivers of Babylon, Atlantic, Mississippi, singing the how long, backup chorus of water gets down. the sound of the horizon, ancient prophetic awakening. If they're on a stop disposition to follow through that some steps take to see, dances you to the edge of an almost unmoving current of dissolution. You can't see the trees. They're carrying on so, dry along so. I told you so. Some moments happen out of happening before. The same old walk on water over a pointy-head white sheet selected precedent has to be taken back through its own weave, apart, through its thread, through its cotton's bloody picking of fingers to the dirt on its own doing, isn't seriously lying about the words of the contract between man and land, contract between getting and paying, cause and effect, the fact taken back, that it happened, without which you would not be here, is what everyone here is. A continual presence of the present does not enact a changed presence. In its consequence first, slavery happened. So you're here. What follows that is a series of poems that pick up the idea of absence. I won't go into all of them. But there's a form, there's a Japanese poem that's traditionally called Whose Sleeves. It's a tagasode. The words are the framing phrase of the poet's elegy to his dead wife upon smelling her perfume in kimono who's folded beside their bed where she formerly slept. The poem is simple. Whose sleeves have brushed past? Or would it be this plum tree blossoming here at home? The poem appears in the collected Japanese poems of ancient and modern times, which was an imperial anthology of waka form poetry that was published around circa 920. The whose sleeves phrase is synonymous with the general kind of love poems, but also in art, it's a form of still life. But it's a still life composed of kimono patterns, folded kimono patterns. So what I wanted to do was write a series of whose sleeves in contemporary. Your shape is in the robe, worn or not. A roominess of you folds into its cloth. A sachet in a drawer from which the air of the place was taken, fixed up, you're here. The smell has temperature and space. The wider warmth that buttered popcorn tastes, yet not you. It folds into a time's clock, a sachet in a drawer, personage of its own, still you. I have to wear a bus to Rikers Island with opaque tears up to my neck to get in to see you. In your 2-inch thick glass robe, I have to imagine you naked under. To place my hand saying, I miss you. Against you where I can't touch and love has to break across insulating space still warm. I have to stand my day in the folding up, put away, given you as time with you. I smell, I need you on my clothes. Written for a woman whose husband was on Rikers Island. I smell gunfire folded in to every turn. The city's track laps into its hands on race, then files away not guilty. I smell the drawers of the records they keep folded away, from stands taken away. Distance doesn't dissipate. The space between the bullet holes in you, in me, folded. You are the map I have to sleep with in my pocket to be sure I know how to get out of here. Your shape is in the robe. The sharp creases of its fold when you wore it locked into the counterpoint around you that even folded stood you out to me, that they couldn't see you, that one day they would shoot, always folded into the robe you were gun or not, phone mistaken or empty-handed, innocent or not. There is this fold on itself we sleep in the fabric of this country's culture.